Good morning. Let's talk about drama. Am I the drama? Am I the drama? I almost spilled that coffee. So, my plan for today was to talk a bit about some comments that I got on recent videos, and I'm still going to do that. But I think that also meshes with an exercise that I conducted yesterday, which is an Ask Me Anything on my Instagram. So get your beverages. Let's talk a little bit about drama. Instagram has this native feature. You can put a little like question box on your stories, and people can ask you questions, or people often use it to submit like ideas for something. But then there's also this app called NGL, which allows you to do like anonymous questions. And this is pretty popular on the side of Bookstagram that I'm on. To every once in a while throw up an NGL link and just get anonymous questions. Some accounts have like a fairly structured way of doing it. And I think that I am turning into one of those accounts. I kind of like having a monthly Ask Me Anything. I did it like a month ago, and I don't know if there were like pent up questions or whatever, but it's a way for people to get to know you, and it's also a way for people to just like throw stuff out into the ether and see what sticks. And sometimes in a good way and sometimes in a bad way. The very first question that I got on this anonymous question link was an attack on an indie author for being problematic without any kind of context. You can't really like put a lot in one of these anonymous questions. You can't put like a lot of context there. So it makes them great for just like lobbing a firecracker into a room and then like seeing what happens when it goes off. And I regret having answered the question in the first place. After the first one of these that I got, I just adopted a new approach, which is anytime I got one of these drama questions, I promoted my favorite Thai online cat, Bone Bone. Bone Bone is so good. He's so handsome. And I have to say, I didn't mention this in my stories about Bone Bone because I don't want to get people upset, but like my partner and I have been following Bone Bone for a long time, and he's a cat, and that long time is starting to make me feel very worried that like, oh no, Bone Bone is becoming like a very handsome elderly gentleman. What's gonna happen to him? Anytime he goes to the pet hospital, we follow this cat like way too closely. Anytime he goes to the pet hospital, I'm like, oh, how is his blood work? Anyway, I am not a drama account. I don't particularly like, I hope this doesn't come off as like pick me. It's like, oh, I'm not like the other girls. I don't talk about discourse. I do certainly get involved in conversations, but I am not deux moi for Bookstagram or Book Talk or anything like that. I am always open to feedback if I don't know something that is important to know about an author or a creator and you want to tell me that, my DMs are always open. But the kinds of things that I was getting that I was covering up with photos of this very handsome cat were really just like, I don't like these people. And perhaps unsurprisingly, given the nature of the Bookstagram romance community, all of the people who were catching strays in my AMA were gay men. And that's a real bummer as a gay man. There are some authors and creators who sort of regularly come up for this kind of criticism is a charitable way of describing it. Abuse is another way that you might describe it. I am not wanting to talk about that on my Instagram account or here. What I want to talk about is what I want to talk about. And then I also want to just talk a little bit about anonymity and the internet. So I think that in many ways, I'm still introducing myself to Bookstagram and the wider romance and queer literature community. And I think the thing that I'm doing, if there is a thing that I'm doing, is not necessarily a particularly common thing. The most common way that people are in the romance community is as fans. I got a lot of questions in this AMA of like, recommend a book like this or recommend books like that. And I'm like, I'm not really a book recommendation account. In the 2 or so years that I have been regularly reading romance, I have maybe read like 50 of them, which feels like a lot to me, but is tiny. Like there are people who read hundreds of romance books a year and have been doing it for like a decade or longer. And the stuff that I'm putting out about romance is either like critical commentary and analysis about particular things. Like a popular video of mine in the past week is a 10-minute discussion about like prostate stimulation. Not like a how-to guide, but I don't know. I guess there is some like helpful advice in there. And also the videos that I'm posting here, which are the shortest is an hour and 20 minutes long. And I mentioned this in a previous coffee chat, reminding me of coffee. Which is, I don't know, when I was talking about star ratings, like, I don't know how I can do the thing that I want to do on the internet and also have star ratings. I don't know how I can do an hour and 21 minutes on Game Changer by Rachel Reed and then say, it was 3 stars, or it was 3.5 stars, or it was 3.35 stars, or whatever. Like, it just doesn't, those are inconsistent for me. But I think a lot of people interact in the MM Romance community in that way. So I might be sort of like an ugly duckling in the community. I don't sort of look like the rest of the accounts. And I'm still like pretty new. I've been discussing MM Romance on TikTok for a long time, but as I have shifted my focus to Instagram and YouTube, I think that I am reintroducing myself to people. And I really haven't been around for that long. I think I can peg my active use of Instagram to when I started regularly posting stories. And that was like the last day of April. So it's been like 10 weeks. 10 weeks is not a lot of time. So it's maybe not so surprising for me then that people are still not sure like what exactly my thing is. And also I've been not very good at telling people what my thing is. It only occurred to me yesterday that I might want, and because of a conversation with someone the day before, that I might want to tell people what I'm doing, and I posted a calendar of the videos that are coming up, a thing that I have not thought to do in 3 years of doing videos for the internet. You live and learn. But I think that it's just going to take time of me educating people about how I show up on the internet and how I want to show up on the internet. And for some people, that's going to be like, oh, cool, I'm not into that. I think for most people, it's going to be like, oh, cool, not for me, but maybe it's for somebody else. And I don't want to discourage people from asking questions because I think that there is a fun community building aspect of having those anonymous question links out there. But I do feel really bad when people are like, what are all of your favorite books with rimming? And I'm like, I don't know. And then someone like, I just said like, oh, recommend me your favorite books and I'll just I'll repost about those. And then someone DM'd me and was like, oh yeah, like what about the Slade James Bear Camp books? I'm like, oh yeah, I read those books, they were really good. But it's that stuff just kind of like flows out of my brain. I know that there are people on Bookstagram in the MM Romance community who not only read a lot of books, but they also kind of like carefully tag them with Goodreads, or they have a spreadsheet, or like just some kind of note-taking system, so they know like, oh, this is a book that has all of these tropes and has all of those stuff. And I think that's great. I just don't approach it in the same way. So I feel like I am not providing that kind of service to people, and I feel bad if people are asking that. So I do think that I don't know. I'm not like trying to sanction people negatively when they ask questions like that, but I do think that they are going to like touch the stove enough times to eventually know that like, oh, it's probably not the right account to ask the kind of recommendation questions to. On the anonymous questions in general, and in particular attacking gay men, I feel all kinds of ways about that. And the first and biggest way that I feel about it is related to this line from the movie Les Jeux Sans Fait. I picked this up from Merlin Mann on his Back to Work podcast 15 years ago now, maybe longer, which is the line, the awful thing about life is this, that everybody has their reasons. I think that most people go through the world thinking that they have their reasons, that they are the hero of their own story, that even when they do bad things, they have a reason for doing them, and that most other people just are the way that they are. And it's difficult to see other people in the same way that you see yourself. I'm not saying that I'm somehow enlightened or better than other people, but I work really hard to always see the other person. I know that the people who are acting in a way that I think is kind of abusive and negative have their reasons, that they don't think that they are evil, that they don't think that they are the villain in their story. But I do think that they probably are not seeing the humanity in other people, and that they are prioritizing things in a way that is not aligned with my values. So mostly I feel bad that people would have that kind of a negative perception and an inability to see the humanity in other people and not be able to bust through that. That feels isolating and like thought terminating to me. And if there is one thing that I am about on the internet, it is the opposite of thought termination. It is like an abundance of thoughts. An overabundance of thoughts occasionally or all the time. But I do need to protect the community that I'm trying to build. So, like, I have adopted the Bone method. I am not, like I said, I am not a Demois. I am not a Gossip Girl account for the Romance internet. There are accounts that do that. If people submit questions like that in a way that I think is just trying to like stir up shit, I'm just gonna post a very handsome cat. And I can't imagine that people who are submitting those questions are watching this video in the first place. But if someone were to watch this, what I would have to say is I'm sorry that somewhere along the way you felt very hurt by something. That is not a good feeling. I wish that I could take that hurt away from you, but I know for sure that what you're doing is not gonna take the hurt away. And I'm not saying that like, oh, all gay men are like precious little angels and innocents. Like, I have been regularly bullied by gay men. The gay male community can be like extremely toxic. But I do think the fact that there is a lot of active targeting of gay men, and that I have had many gay men, authors and content creators and just readers come to me in literal tears because of how rejected they've felt by the Romance community, a community which is putatively about celebrating the people that they are. The fact that they often feel like it only celebrates the fictional versions of them, but when they, an actual real life gay man, try to participate, that they are themselves bullied or they don't feel accepted. That sucks, and that is something to think about. All right, well, that was a great way to start out our Tuesday morning. Very positive. Let's get Bone up here again. We need some more Bone. I would like to talk about some comments that I've gotten on recent videos, because this is like the opposite. So maybe this video isn't so much about the drama, it's about community. And communities have drama. Communities always have drama. From like the teeniest, tiniest communities to the biggest communities, there's always going to be drama. But community is also very valuable, and something. I am never going to be a really big account. I am a niche of a niche of a niche, right? It's like book content, Romance content, like critical analysis and discussion of Romance, like that. We're like, there might be several hundred people on the planet who are interested in that, but boy, I seem to be attracting some of them, because what I wanted more than anything with the move to YouTube, although like TikTok has now started allowing longer comments, and it is confusing to see the long comments. I'm still like, what is this more button? But the thing that I really wanted with the move to YouTube is the ability to leave longer, thoughtful comments. And now I had been warned by other content creators who don't do the thing that I do, that you can get like really negative, really shitty comments on YouTube. And I've gotten a few of those, particularly on my earliest Rena Kent video, from people who just like really like Rena Kent and didn't appreciate that I had negative things to say about her works. But mostly I've been getting long, thoughtful, engaged commentary on the things that I'm putting out there. And that is like what I have desperately been seeking, is the ability is to throw out all of my thoughts in as structured as a format as I can, and then to get people reacting to them and saying like, oh, I haven't thought about this in this way, or like, hey, you said this, but you didn't say this. Did you think about this other thing? And I'm like, oh, wow, no, I didn't think about that. Having that kind of forum for discussion, like YouTube is still not that. I still would really like, this is like I think it's just because I'm old. I really would like something like the old bulletin boards that I had in my youth, like the Star Wars message boards, and just like BBS style conversations with threads and topics and stuff. Like, that's what I really, really would like if I was ever going to make a community. I think you can put Discord into like a forum mode where it works more like that. That sounds like the ideal kind of place for me. I just like don't like group chats with meandering conversations. I can't keep up with them. I like things organized into topics. And videos are, topical, and you get comments on them. So there is like a facsimile of that on YouTube. And boy, have I been enjoying some of the comments. So I want to share some of them with you now. All right, so I'm just scrolling through the comments on my Game Changer video, and this is in chronological order of when they were posted, I think. The first one is from the Madwoman69, who left a long, thoughtful comment. One thing that I want to pull out is I had this conversation about delayed adolescence in queer men, and the Madwoman69 said, the delayed adolescence part was very interesting to hear about as someone who went through that too. check, and didn't realize that maybe that's why I wasn't too annoyed reading those two guys going so fast into this relationship. LOL. That is something that I don't think I'd like scrolling through some Goodreads comments and other kinds of commentary about Game Changer. I didn't see anyone bringing that up. I think that that is a perceptive thing that Reed was doing, and I don't think it excuses insta love for all queer couples, but I do think that just because of how she architected the characters and how their relationship especially the Scott Hunter of it all, like how closeted he was and how much he, you know, it's like his relationship broveries were pinging, like how much he really really wanted that. That just felt like a pretty present theme, and it's really great to hear from someone who also sounds like they are a queer person potentially, or at least have this understanding of delayed adolescence for another reason, and then, you know, coming to understand that maybe that's why in this instance that they weren't annoyed with this when they might be annoyed with that kind of a trope in other contexts. That's exactly the kind of thing that I want to like pluck out from these books, and I'm also really looking for people to pluck out those things that I didn't notice. And I will admit the Madwoman 69 mentioned like the women appearing in these books, and hoping that I see the potential of Svetlana. This is a character in Heated Rivalry. I will fully admit I don't even think I mentioned her in my Heated Rivalry review. I had a lot more to say about Shane and Ilya and a couple other characters. I don't know if Svetlana comes up in the long game. I do. I that video is gonna be like over an hour and a half. I think it's close to an hour. It might be close to an hour and 40 minutes. I cover a lot of territory and I had a lot to say, but you know, I'm never gonna be able to say everything in one of these videos. So those are the kinds of things that I'm really looking for. If Svetlana appears in the long game, I think that's interesting. Also, I hadn't really thought about it until last week, but I do think for all of these series, I'm going to need to do a final video that's kind of like sits on top of it and plucks out a lot of broader thoughts. So maybe like some Svetlana talk will come up there. So another comment that I got is from Contessa Dark. Uh, they're starting out asking, I think they say that they're a straight woman. Yeah. So Contessa asks, have I ever considered doing a video series exploring gay tropes, how they're done well or poorly, which authors not to take notes from? I'm a lot hesitant to say, like, this is bad. This is the bad author and they're doing the bad thing. I just had the whole first half of this video talking about basically talking about empathy and understanding people more complexly. I don't think you know, an author who writes what I think is bad representation uh, is like a bad person or anything like that. Which is not to say that I wouldn't do this. It's just not something that I have teed up on my TikTok, which I'll put a link in the description if you are a BookTube only person. I'm very interested to know people who only know me from BookTube. I can't imagine that that's a large number of people that. Oh, my fiance's getting up. I can hear his alarm going off. Still going off. Time to wake up. Okay, long jump cut there. Anyway, in all seriousness, though, it worries me that the popularity of a work validates its contents and inevitably results in bad portrayals, infusing into the collective psyche through worse clones. Do you know how hard it is to find writing, even SEM, sexually explicit material, that's actually written by men? True. Unfortunately, people equate repetition with truth regardless of accuracy. I know the gay community is not a monolith, but it would be nice to have clear takes that disabuse writers of the worst notions. No pressure or anything. No pressure. Oh, and maybe Contessa Dark is one of these BookTube only people, because she's saying she might have to go over onto TikTok, because I mentioned I do have a series on my TikTok called Butt Stuff and Books, and I just have a video out about it yesterday or the day before, about portrayals of like prostate stimulation and a bunch of research about how things do and don't work down there. And I have had a lot of authors say like that they have used that series in as kind of like hopefully not like a replacement for a sensitivity reader, but as like research for the books that they're doing. So I hope that that's helpful for people. I haven't done stuff about gay tropes in particular, and I do want to like focus in on this thing about like the popularity of a work validates its contents, and that this sort of like replicates, you know, like negative stereotypes. I think that there is a lot of truth to that. I don't think it's necessary. Like, so I have like a complicated like set of thoughts about that. So there are cis gay male authors who perpetuate negative stereotypes and have poor representation in their books. I don't think that there's anything like inherent in women writing gay male characters that it's going to be bad or something. I think that if you don't know about a community and you don't do research in it, the chances that you're going to get something wrong are probably higher. And if you don't approach it from a perspective of care, I think that, then you are more likely to be reckless. I do want to push back a little bit on the literature infusing into the collective psyche. I think that it is a little bit more of like a cyclical reinforcement thing. It's that those negative representations are coming from society and that they get into the books, and then that can reinforce something that was already there. I don't think that there are negative things that people believe about gay men, or just like inaccurate things that people believe about gay male relationships and gay male sexuality that come 100% from like romance or sexually explicit material. I think it is a bit more of a, the fault, dear Brutus, is not in our stars, it's in ourselves kind of thing. But it hurts to see it in the literature, and it hurts to see it be popular. I have a somewhat recent video about like not particularly being up for bi awakenings, and since I am doing this series over the next year, I'm going to be reading a lot of them, and I'm just going to have to, navigate that, and maybe I'll feel differently about it later. But I think that the use of bi awakenings, again, I have complicated thoughts on that, and I don't want this to be like an hour-long video. I have a series of those on my TikTok as well. But I think that Gay for You was a pretty big thing in a slightly earlier generation of romance material, and then it was sort of roundly rightly criticized, and I think it just kind of morphed into demisexual awakenings and bi awakenings that I think are still like kind of Gay for You. The context or the nuance that I want to put around that is, I think a lot of the authors who write those might have had those bi awakenings. So it's not that bi awakenings don't happen, and in fact it might be very important for the author, but there's such an abundance of it in the literature, and I think that some of that is just like, oh, that's what people like, and that does seem like that might be like the idea of Gay for You and bi awakenings, that does well. So see, I still think that this is downstream of culture a little bit. That does seem like pretty like encoded in pornography and romance, like that. I don't think that by itself is a thing that people think is like true of gay men, but I do think that and I if you like these kinds of stories, or if you write these kinds of stories, please understand I'm not saying that you specifically are doing this intentionally or even unintentionally. But I think that the idea of Gay for You uh, does have a pretty like uh, a tenuous but nevertheless present undertone of like gay male predator and hypersexuality negative representation. And again, I'm remembering I did talk a little bit about this in my bi awakening videos on TikTok, so you can seek those out if you would like. Let's move on. Oh, this is like such an interesting comment from commenter 2498. What a good name. So they were talking about a little bit about the Stucky fic adaptation, and some of the analysis that we discussed about like class, and how that impacted Scott and Kip differently in Game Changer. But I think that this is like a very insightful thing that I didn't really get into at any length. One thing in that vein I wish we had learned was literally anything about what periods of history Kip was interested in, or even what region. That's such a good point. I know he looks at European history books in the Barnes & Noble, the Union Square Barnes & Noble, by the way, but that's so vague. And the only other time I feel like he gets into any specifics is when he talks about not knowing about knights or whatever when he and Scott were on their date at the Met. Apart from telling untold stories, which fine, that's kind of what all of history is about, I feel like it would have been so much more rewarding, even if it took a little more research, to actually learn what kinds of historical stories Kip wants to tell. That's such a good point. That's such a good point. I think that Kip is really underexplored in that way, and it makes him feel, it kind of like reinforces his own negative self-talk, where he's like, "Oh, I'm like nobody, I don't like it." But it also makes it feel less fully realized. Like, oh yeah, if you're applying to graduate school, usually you're not like for history. Usually you're not applying for just like general history, right? Um, and I don't think, we know that he probably wants to work in a museum or something like that, but we don't exactly know what his aspirations are around that. So it makes him feel like less fully realized than Scott, who has like very clear motivations. Kip is just sort of a lot more general. And I think that again, not to harp on the Fick adaptation of it all, but I think that comes from that, right? It's like Bucky has very clear motivations, and if you're replacing them, you might just like not fully, you might not like do all the work of replacing it. Emma Savage 912 says, I'll be honest, I don't think I've read, this is talking about Fic adaptation. I'll be honest, I don't think I've read a book that was originally Fic in which the characters felt fully formed. I would love some examples of that. Like, there seems to be like such a large quantity of adapted fic these days, and not even these days. I mean, like, fic has been adapted for a long time, but I guess specifically in romance, but generally, if people um, have examples of like very well adapted fic, I'd be interested to see it. I think that you are always going to run into issues there where the so much about characters are about their context, and when you like rip them out of their context, it does damage to them. And I think I even put it that way in the Game Changer video. Like, there was damage done to those characters, and there's a whole lot about that in the Heated Rivalry video. Oh my god. The fact that it's, well, I think I don't know that Rachel has said that this is Stucky Fic, that Game Changer is Stucky Fic. I don't know if she's ever come right out and said that Heated Rivalry is RPF of Sidney Crosby and Alexander Ovechkin, but it's very clear that it is. And I think that, again, that translation process, there was damage done. And I have issues with Heated Rivalry with not seeing enough of the rivalry, because I think that Reed was probably taking for granted a lot of it, because Crosby and Ovechkin are real people, and their rivalry is pretty well understood to hockey fans. Oh, also, just looking at some of the comments on the coffee chat from last week, lots of people didn't know what Dramatis Personae is. I mean, it's cast of characters. I don't know if that's like a theater kid thing, because it's always called that at the beginning of plays, or what. But yeah, apologies if you don't know what Dramatis Personae is. I will die on this hill. I think that all books would benefit from having a list of who the characters are, and just like a short description of all of them, at least the main relevant characters. Okay, and then finally, just kind of scrolling through some of the comments on my most recent Rena Kent video about, what's it called? I've already forgotten. Kiss the Villain. Okay, so Orion is one of the first comments that I see on here, and Orion is one of my favorites. I know Orion from TikTok. It really is the Satine of it all that gives weight to your crackpot slash theory. Orion is talking about my theory that Kaden and Gareth are Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker. And only in the Clone Wars series, Obi-Wan Kenobi has a relationship with this Mandalorian woman named Satine, and she's killed. And that it's not like it's not like his reason for being or anything, but it is very relevant. And the fact that there is another S-named character who is like looms large over Caden's life, I'm like, something's going on here. The other thing that a lot of people brought up is that it feels very like boys love, like BL. And that is something that I did not pick up on. And this is one of the reasons why I really like throwing out my kinds of analysis and theories about books, because I am not necessarily like super well read in the romance genre and in the broader genre. So like, I have read and consumed hardly any manga, and me just like describing things going on in Kiss the Villain for people who hadn't read it, they're like, this sounds like BL. And I would not be surprised if Rena Kent, or there are persistent rumors that Rena Kent is not a real person, that it's like a collective of people or ghostwriters or whatever, but whoever wrote Kiss the Villain, I will call them Rena Kent, that Rena is a BL fan, or that moving into her romance era, she did research in BL because she knows it's popular. That feels like it's probably over the target. Yeah, here's a comment here. Necronoma Clown 53, that's a good name. Based on this description of the author's writing and favorite tropes, I would guess that she's a prolific fanfic writer, which is not a bad thing necessarily. And I agree, I don't think that that's a bad thing, but it's inheriting a lot of fanficky issues. And then I think this person basically is pushing back a little bit on me, and I think in a way that I appreciate. I think your suggestions to up the intensity of the emotional stakes sound really good, but also something a fanfic writer might avoid if they just want tropey comfort food. I think that that's a good point. For example, talking more about the first scene as an actual assault and having the characters actually grapple with it could have been interesting, but it's also hard compared to the trope standard dubcon. LOL. I love these deep dives. Thank you for making them. Thank you for watching them. I think that's a really good point. My uh I talk a lot about someone brought this up in my AMA yesterday. Like, do you think that romance should be realistic? Because a lot of the stuff that I talk about, and you might say harp on, is lack of realism. And it's not that I think that romance generally, and MM romance specifically, should feel realistic. It's that I get frustrated when I don't feel like authors are making really intentional choices. So for both God of Fury and Kiss the Villain, they are somewhat heightened realities, but they get into a lot of minute detail about these guys' lives, and we have their first person in their head perspectives, and then we skip over or never deal with things that seem relevant to the characters that have been constructed and the way that we're experiencing them. So, for example, in God of Fury, Brandon is such a he's such a fussy type A fastidious coded person, and we get so much granular detail about everything around him. To not deal with bottom prep just feels like, oh, the author didn't want to deal with that. And people say like, oh well, that's just a fantasy. It's like, well, but like why is that the one particular thing that makes it a fantasy? Why would that make it not be a fantasy? I had much less of a problem with it in Kiss the Villain, which also doesn't deal with bottom prep, because it felt like even more of a heightened reality than God of Fury, because both of the characters are just so larger than life. Brandon is just like kind of a normal person. But what I said in the response to that AMA comment, and I think it's the same thing here, it's I'm looking for intentionality, and so I'm not necessarily looking for realism. I'm looking for authenticity, and authenticity is not code for it needs to be like something that like relates to me or that I understand. It's that the characters need to feel authentic in their world. And for example, in Heated Rivalry, there is also no discussion of prepping for bottoming, which, whatever. But because it's third person limited, and just because of how the scenes are constructed with lots of little breaks in the action, and I think Rita's really good about not getting into a lot of specific details about stuff, and because of how she constructed the characters, it didn't bother me at all, because I knew, even if the narrator never talked about it, Shane is the kind of person who definitely preps a lot for bottoming. Absolutely, because how shame focused he is, and how competitive he is, that he would absolutely freak out if there was any little bit of unpleasantness on the condom afterwards. So I just know he's that kind of character, even though it was never said on the page. It's when authors foreclose those possibilities. So in Him by Serena Bowen and Al Kennedy, there's a first time bottoming scene, and we see every single thing that happens for hours leading up to it, and it makes it seem like, wow, this would have been a really bad time, and someone who is more experienced probably shouldn't have put a less experienced person in this position, and there's just weird things going on here. It made it feel less authentic. Last comment that I'll get into is from Obi-Wan Pierogi. God, good names. People pick good names. Wait, didn't this author already do an asexual character getting forced into these type of situations? Or am I thinking of another video of yours? No, yeah, they did this already. It was God of Fury. Regardless, ew. Also, as someone who masks a lot, I'm autistic. The idea of that this character can mask 24/7 and not feel like a zombie afterward is wild. I mask when I leave the house, and when I get home, sometimes I need to take a nap. LMAO. I need this guy's tips. So 2 really important things here. One, I think a huge failing of Kiss the Villain is that Gareth's sexual journey is basically copy and pasted from Brandon's sexual journey. And I think both of them are just gay for you with the serial numbers filed off. They both are asexual who have demisexual, homo exclusive awakenings. Gareth is thinks he's some kind of fluid. Like he's still attracted to women, but the big thing that occurs to both of them is that they are largely asexual and that they are demisexual. That is gay for you. And I'm sorry, like this is not this is where I do think that there is a lack of realism and that there is real world authenticity that is running into things. Like these kinds of I'm sure there are people there's might be people watching this video who identify as asexual and demisexual, but this is not like so common that 2 out of 2 of your books should have exactly the same kind of sexual journey for one of the main characters. That's crazy. Oh, and they both bottom too, right? That gets back to the main point of the Kiss the Villain video is that the author was lazy. They use lots of shortcuts. But I think it's very interesting that this commenter also brings up the idea of masking. This is another thing where it's like, I talk a lot about gay male sexuality, but there's other types of representation. There's other kinds of authenticity in books. And this person is talking about the idea of like masking all the time. I think that was also largely unsuccessful, mostly because we didn't see it very much. But we are told that this character is constantly masking. And then this person who does this as well is saying like, wow, it didn't feel very authentic to me because there was no like consequences of it. I think that is a great point. And that is another reason why I just absolutely love throwing these videos out into the world and learning other things about them that I didn't see because I don't have that background. I don't come from that community necessarily. Or even if I do, maybe it's just not something that occurred to me. Not everything occurs to me. So that's why I absolutely love the community aspect of this. I think this is the first of these coffee chats that was just like one kind of theme, community. There are negative aspects of community. Like I am going to be a lot more careful about these AMAs in the future. I do think I want to keep doing them every month. Even though I got 83 questions, I'm sure that there was probably only like 8 or 9 people sending the questions. I can't imagine that a lot of people were engaged in it, but boy, it was a lot of questions. And if the number of questions, there was like 60 the first time, if the number of questions keeps increasing like that, I am going to have to figure out a way to handle that. But boy, I really like doing that because I like seeing the types of questions that people have, throwing things out into the world, and then getting DMs about them and having those conversations. Again, I would just love to have another place where that could happen a little bit more in the open if I'm able to figure that out. This is like here's the part of the video where I've mentioned in the past, like, oh yeah, a Patreon or something. I am probably pumping the brakes on that. I just like I don't know. I don't feel comfortable about it. Like I do feel like I'm kind of rebuilding whatever it is I'm doing on the internet. I've only been on Instagram for 10 weeks and I don't think people really know enough about me, like so much so that, I had an AMA and I think a lot of the questions were sort of like, oh, I don't know if you really know like what I'm doing. But also like, I don't know, I just feel a way about like holding my hand out for support when it's like everybody's having tough economic times and I'm doing this stuff anyway. I identify with Shane and I am very like shame like motivated, and I'm like particularly worried about starting something up like that and having, like 4 people sign up for it, and then I would feel even like, oh, it was unsuccessful and I feel like I have to do stuff for these people who are like paying me money. I don't know. I just feel like a way about like asking for something like that right now. So I think I still might try to find some people to help work with me on like some cool stuff to make tongue-in-cheek like fun, like some art and things, but maybe it will all be part of just like stuff that I'm doing on YouTube and Instagram and TikTok, and then maybe I'll think about the like something like Patreon in the future. If there is a way to set up a Discord so it worked like a forum, boy, the more I think about it, the more I'm like, that is like a really cool idea. If anyone has thoughts about that, definitely feel free to reach out. Happy Tuesday. Y'all are my favorite, even when you are being out of hand.